Hola todos, how we doing? Welcome to your virtual chapter 12 class. I wanted to get this up and out there so we can ask questions both in Monday and Wednesday's class about chapter 12 and chapter 13. So this chapter has three main components. The first part is recruiting, second part is selecting, and the third part is training salespeople. Now, when we're talking about the recruiting and selecting part, the first half of the chapter, these go hand in hand. And what we have here is a very nice arrow diagram, excuse me, that basically gives us the broad spectrum. It's really, actually thinking about this would be great for multiple choice kind of questions on the exam, wouldn't it? You know, establishing a policy, determine the criteria, finding the pool of applicants, and then evaluating them. We're going to walk through all this as we go through these slides. So, these here, the four stages, this is the four colored, or most colored, all the way to the left of the arrows. These right here. So, no big deal on that slide. So, establish responsibility. Now, in some firms, it's HR that does the hiring. In some firms, it's the sales managers that does the hiring in coordination with HR. But the point is that there needs to be a specific set policy. You know, who is running the search and how we're going to go about that search. Search must be done in a systematic, strategic fashion. It can't be a haphazard thing. Remember, the salespeople are ridiculously important. These are the boundary spanners of the firm. These are the people outside the firm that represent the corporation. And in my opinion, most importantly, the salespeople are responsible for the majority of the revenue that comes into the firm. This is a very big deal. So, once we have a policy set, then we got to figure out, okay, how are we going to get this rolling here? So we might want to conduct a job analysis, meaning what PowerPoint is automatically saving. Isn't that great? The job analysis is just, okay, what needs to be done? Based on what needs to be done, we have a description crafted. And then we have some kind of a statement of job qualifications that will fit with this description, that this description will flow into what the job needs. Oh. Job analysis. So there's usually two different sources where we get the job analysis information. We usually can get it from whoever currently has the job. And we could get it from the sales manager who supervises that person. It may or may not be the case that this person is available. It could be the case that this person left, or this person got fired, or this person's not available. So we have to rely on the sales manager, and we have to rely on, maybe a previous description, job description that was created for that particular job. And that could be tweaked. We're hoping that the current occupant is still around. This would help deal with any misunderstandings we may or may not have. So then the job description has to be very specific, especially in a new school selling world. Because if we care more about CRM, CLV, long-term, new school, then there might be more variables or more tasks that are important other than just hitting your monthly or weekly or quarterly sales targets. We do need the nature of products and service being sold, who's being called on, what responsibilities are carried out, and who has them, so there's no role conflict and role ambiguity. That's the same could be said here. Some detail about the mental and physical demands of the particular job. And when we're thinking about selection criteria, remember, not all salespeople are the same. Not all salespeople will have the same set of characteristics. So there's some give and take. There's some trade-offs. We have to determine what traits are more favorable versus not favorable, particularly giving our company, our industry, and our philosophy of selling. Now, when we think about trying to find applicants, we can think about them coming from two different distinct places. We have internal sources and we have external sources. This is by far the preferred route. And usually what good sales organizations have is they have a number of either understudies or inside salespeople that when a position becomes available, these people could become the candidate. When you have someone on the inside, you have some established performance, you have some knowns, there's less orientation and training needed because they're familiar with the company. It also boosts morale. There's a lot of companies that will only hire from within. And what they'll do is they'll spend an awful amount of time making sure they get good candidates from the universities, like Seton Hall. They bring those candidates in for an entry-level, 12, 18, 24-month burn on the high side, and then all leadership positions are filled from within this initial pool. It has the advantages of having your internal pool already. Now, sure, we can do external. We can go to headhunters. We can go to LinkedIn. We can get referrals from other firms, although that might be tough. Sure, we can put ads in Sales and Marketing Management and Selling Power or some of our industry trade magazines. There's the headhunters right there. We can go to educational institutions like Seton Hall. And we can always go to LinkedIn, which is the internet, Indeed, and those kind of things. External sources tend to take longer. And it may be the case that you don't have an internal candidate, so you need to go to the external source. Now, hiring directly from the competition, good thing or a bad thing? Well, it does reduce the learning curve. They're very familiar with the industry. They have an external motivator, like their company, they can compete against their old company. They already have a strong knowledge base. The downside to hiring from the competitors is, what if the culture from that firm doesn't fit into the culture of our firm? So what? They got great results there. Are they going to get the same results here? There's this thing about, hopefully there's no craziness within the customer relationships. One of the reasons why you would hire a customer is because they already have relationships. And when you're hiring that salesperson, you're basically hiring their relationships. Hopefully a lot of those relationships will transfer. And hopefully the customer trust level will stay the same. This might help in the short term with regards to hiring someone directly from competitors. It may not help you from the long term. Meaning, if you're not developing people internally, then you could have issues further down the road. All right, so when we're thinking about selection procedures, yes, of course that we can do the application, and beyond that we can do a personal interview. We might have a telephone screener interview first, and that way we can reduce the pile even further, and from there we can do a more personal interview. We're always doing background and reference checks. You guys should be familiar with this one, psychological tests. We did one for Guardian. We did theirs. We can look at intelligence, IQ. We've talked a lot in the semester about EQ as well. We can look for certain personality variables such as grit, and also certain skill levels, certain aptitudes, and we can see if we can grab that through a test. Now, if we think about applications, applications is basically getting a resume. You might get some background information. You're looking for something that's going to jump off the page. It's a basic screener is really what it comes down to. And it also gives the manager something to prep the interview from. Now, when it comes to personal interviews, there are structured and unstructured. The way it makes it set up in the book, that it sounds like you're either doing one or you're doing the other. And usually what happens is that it starts off structured and shifts to unstructured, where you either ask everybody the same 3 questions and then you let it go from there, or you make sure that you have 5 questions on your sheet. You may not ask them the same way to each applicant, but we make sure that every applicant has to respond to these 5 questions. We could do something, a realistic preview. We could have a potential follow a salesperson around to learn more about a job. I mean, this is very time consuming. This might be done with more like a rookie level kind of thing. It also depends how fast you need to fill the position. This is very slow, very slow. Okay. So personal interviews are good. We like personal interviews. As a matter of fact, some of the videos that you guys have been watching from Seller Power talk about the power of the personal interview. However, they're not a great predictor of future job performance. It's better when there are multiple people interviewing the candidate, because then if 3, 4, 5 people think it's a good salesperson, there's probably better validity. What are the sales managers often looking for? They're looking for preparation. They're looking for, adaptability, thinking on their feet, their personality. They're looking for some kind of experience, a good fit with the culture, match, fit. Those are good words. Within the interviewing process, these are questions that you legally should not ask. God, what's up with PowerPoint that they keep saving everything here? I don't get it. So age, there's no reason to go there. There's no reason to go into nationality and race, religion, sex, marital status, arrests, convictions. No. Physical issues, height, weight. Excuse me. These are questions that you should not be going with. There's legal reasons why. So let's pretend we go through the process. We come up, we have a hole, we have to fill it. We come up with our policies. We write a job description. We then interview a bunch of people. We then hire the 2 that we're looking for. So now we have to talk about training. Now, multiple times this semester, I've said the difference between a good sales job and a bad sales job is usually training. The better the sales job, the more in-depth the training will go. There are some companies that do 6, 9, 12, 18 months of training, basically. Those are good sales jobs. Those are good firms. A lot of that could be how to sell. A lot of that could be internal policies. A lot of that could be product knowledge. Think about it from the pharmaceutical perspective. Many of those substances are controlled substances, and you have to take exams in order to be selling these particular types of substances. For all my finance people in class, you can't go out and sell those financial products unless you have your Series 1, your Series 7, and all those other exams. Well, guess what? You need time to take those classes and study for that stuff so you can... All this could fall under the rubric of sales training. Some issues, some questions to be considered. Who's being trained and who's not? What's the primary emphasis? How's it going to be structured? Where is it going to be? So here's our overall objective of sales training. Now, granted that this chapter has been set up in terms of like a new hire and training, we also have to remember that existing salespeople at least once a year are in a training program at some point. So we have the newbies and we have the experienced as well. So depending on what your objective, one of your objectives could be just to improve a skill set, like nonverbal. One of them might be improve customer relationships, having something around, showing the value of CLV. Well, yes, of course, this will increase productivity. Sales meetings always improve morale. You get together with people. You get to commiserate. It's actually a fun thing. And sales, these sales trainings tend to lower turnover. Turnover is a major problem. It is very expensive for a company. Think about, it's not just the salary of that person in that slot. You have that person, they leave, then you have no one generating revenue in that territory. You have the time, effort, and money to hire a new salesperson, and then you have to train that new salesperson. Then that salesperson has to get up to speed in that particular market. So you're putting someone in a position that may or may not be at the same level as the person that just left. Turnover can be very, very expensive. And to do a small tangent, again, this is my blog, Dr. Dig Nuggerville. Turnover is one of the variables that I've studied the most. And I did a paper way back when, and I'm trying to replicate it, to be honest with you. I need to collect data on it again. There's the paper. It was published in Industrial Marketing Management. Here's my co-authors. Here's the title of the paper. But basically, I found that high-performing sales women were more loyal to their firm than high-performing sales men, meaning these sales women were less likely to leave the firm than the men in the same position selling the same products and services. And it was a great finding. It was very publishable. I have a couple things that I would like to extend the study and replicate it again. Yep. So, if we think about sales training, one pessimistic view, some management often expects training to be the solution for all the company's problems. No, it can help, but it's not the problem. It's not a panacea. Too many sales training programs are conducted without the measurement of the benefit, meaning we have a sales training, we learn about nonverbal behavior, everybody goes off back into the field, and there's no after effect measure. Did that training ever have an effect or not on the salespeople? You might get some anecdotal data. You might get some, wow, that was a really great session. You may hear 6 months later, yeah, I'm really practicing my eye contact. But unless there's a systematic way of measuring if that training was impactful or not, then how do I know it was worth the time, effort, and money? So a good program should analyze needs, determine objectives, develop some kind of implementation, and this is where most training and evaluation and review of that particular training program. Most companies don't do this last step. It used to be the case, particularly in old school worlds, in the old school selling, that pep talks and presentations is what training was. It was basically a rah-rah session. It was basically, be more than you are kind of things. You're not tapping your inner belief. You're only running at 88%. You should really be at 110%. And here's how. Yeah. No. And salespeople tend to blow that kind of information off. Salespeople tend to look for actionable items they could use now. More how-tos, not just what's. So, in order to overcome the silliness of just, we're training for the sake of training, rah, 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 we need to link the training to challenges they face. and give them a specific how-to for them, for these. You know, and when we're talking about training needs changes with time, you know, the newbies or the young people, the new recruits, they need certain types of training. And the experienced employees need totally different types of training. These two groups of students, employees, are different. You know. So for new recruits, there's usually a fixed period for formal training. I don't know about days, not in new school, it's not days. Usually we're going to talk about it in weeks or months. Years, I don't know about years. I like to think about it in months, 6, 12, 18 months. And depending on certain aptitude or certain skill levels, what track of training you should be going into. Some might be a more shorter track, say 6 to 12 months. Some might be in a longer track, 12 to 18 months. Because they're either going to be doing inside and outside, or they're going to be doing, after sales service, and it requires some more technical kinds of information. And each company really determines how long a program should be. And we're talking about the beginning of a career, and we're also talking about lifelong learning during career. Experienced salespeople, these people have knowledge of competition in the market. It may become dated. They might need updated tools, information. A good old refresher or advanced training might help someone. And the upside to training is you get someone in, and depending on how well they do with their training, this might be your feeder system to who's going to be the next sales manager. How well they adapt and use the training. So some topics, broadly speaking. Well, we can talk about product knowledge. We can talk about market industry orientation. We can talk about company orientation. Within product knowledge, being well versed. Why does my computer keep saving this? Not only our own products, but competitors' products. There's something might be quirky for market industry. Could there be some interesting or weird quirkiness to your industry on how things are sold? Could be some government regulation kind of thing. Could be an update about what's going on in the current economy, and some of this might have happened in 08, 09, 010 when we had the global financial meltdown. And then company orientation, this is where we kind of have policies that could impact selling and what you can and you cannot do, such as giving gifts or not giving gifts. Where you hear training could also involve how salary is structured, your benefits. Okay. Some other training topics: time and territory management, trying to be more efficient, ethical, legal kind of issues, without question. Technology, that's always a big one, especially if you are selling technology-esque products. But it could be the case that you guys get a new CRM system, and there needs to be training on how to input the data and what kind of reports and how to use the reports. We can also have specialized topics such as price negotiations, nonverbal, all kinds of things that could fit in here that would just be like skill set training. We're going to talk about, we talked about in Neil Rackham, yes we did, the SPIN, S-P-I-N, when we're talking about for our sales presentation, and that could be a specialized training topic, for instance. Training methods. On-the-job training. Well, in an old school world, this was much, much more common. Difference between a good sales job and a bad sales job is there is significantly less on-the-job training. Yes, you will still learn on the go. You will still learn as you're doing your job. but it should not be the primary way you learn at the firm. We have all kinds of webinar or web-based type information. It's great for when salespeople are dispersed and they can do this on their own time. They don't have to fly back to corporate or to Orlando for some sales meeting. Might be better for short-term kind of things. Yes, you could fly back to corporate and you could do classroom training, and this could be very, very beneficial, particularly on the younger end of the career. Depends how much money the firm wants to spend. Oh, we can always do role-playing, what ifs, and how do we do? Okay. Sales training roadblocks. 9 common problems that kill training, inhibit training. Training in and of itself cannot solve all your problems. Some salespeople, I know what I know what I do, I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, I don't think I'm going to learn anything new at this point, I'm too old. Some managers don't buy into the program either. They just said, hey, come in, do this, it'll be great, whatever, I'll sign it off. And managers don't really follow up. They don't support it. They're kind of non-plah about it. So the salespeople won't take it seriously either. Hopefully you don't have this problem. But sometimes you're trained on one thing, then you're trained on another, and there's some conflict. There's some ambiguity. And the methods or philosophies are conflict. So you learn an old school technique even though you're a new school firm. You could get some training that's not relevant to what you need the most. That could be a problem. Same thing with the format. If something is very, very heavy duty and it's being all web-based and there's no in-person, then guess what? Not optimal. Sometimes web-based is overused, or it's used for something that should never be web-based in the first place. This is probably the biggest problem of them all. There's no follow-up. There's no evaluation post-training. And sometimes the trainer is more of a teacher and not an actual salesperson. Usually the best trainers are former salespeople. Because then the salespeople are like, okay, I'll listen to you. You've been out in the field. I get it. On the job, again, I'm not a fan of on the job. Yes, you will learn on the job. Yes, there will be part of teams. There'll be meetings. There'll be customer interaction. There'll be some mentoring. You'll have communication with the other salespeople on your same level. But good sales jobs do a lot more formal training. Bad sales jobs do a lot more on-the-job training. Internet, we have GoToMeeting, we have Skype, we have Google Hangouts, we have WebEx. There's a dozen or so plus platforms that companies use to deliver content. Either live, synchronous communication, or not live, like you're going to be watching this, not live, asynchronous communication. And IBM does tons of training. They do have over 300,000 salespeople worldwide. They tend to do a lot of web-based kinds of webinars and info sessions. Another benefit is you can watch it and watch it again and watch it again. It's not a one-off. Classroom. Very useful. It's rarely the only one. It's the most expensive. It's the most time-consuming. Classroom's usually reserved for something big. Hold on. Role-playing. There's still role-playing that happens. There's still that kind of acting, testing, simulated scenarios. I think this was a little bit more older school than newer school. We had to role play more in the past because someone would be thrown out into the field relatively quickly. So there had to be some role playing now. In new school, there's a lot more mentoring, there's longer training, there's more of a slower build up. So it's not as big of a splash in the pan, so to speak. Finally, to wrap up, when we talk about the costs and benefits of sales training, we have to measure. I've already said this a few times. It may be time consuming. It may be costly. If you don't do the after, was this a good session or not, then you could repeat that session not knowing whether it was beneficial or not. We have to measure the costs and benefits of sales training after the fact. We can't have an anecdotal relationship. We just can't. Okay. I think that's chapter 12. I'm going to put it in your hands, and you're going to ask me questions. If everything's good, then we're fine, and these questions can show up on the exam. Thanks a bunch.